Welcome back. Today we are talking with Jason Haas on Business Continuity Awareness Week, day 4, and we're talking about employee engagement. Jason, great first segment. Lots of interesting comments there, back and forth about organizational culture. Now let's talk about the BCP and how it can be a disservice sometimes during an adverse situation.
Oof, this is kind of a loaded question, and it's full of opinion, and I have my own. So first, what I like to do is start with rough definitions, and keep in mind this is my definition. Yours may differ, and that's fine. So, what is a business continuity plan? All right, it's a comprehensive document that outlines how an organization will continue operating during and after a disruption. Then that's in most basic form. Great. All right. Everyone raise your hands who've pulled out your business continuity plan when your organization's disrupted and tell me how you followed the playbook steps 1 through 100. Yeah, my guess is you might not have. And I'll also be transparent. I haven't been activated in a corporate continuity event. Plenty of personal crisis and activations around that. And I have no playbooks for that besides intuition, experience, training, and practice, which I'll apply the same to the corporate world. Okay, we've got that business continuity plan. We've detailed all these wonderful things, pivot strategies, all this that will never get pulled out during the actual crisis. It'll be reviewed afterwards. How did we align to it? What are our gaps? What are those lessons learned? But, it's a document to show our competency, prove our worth, to show auditors and regulators in a regulated compliance type of environment. But at the end of the day, when things get real and that dark sky event happens, ain't nobody dragging that out. It's just like doing a fire drill. You're going to pull the fire drill plan out and say, step 1, post to social media. Step 2, find the fire exit. Step 3, where's the muster point? Question mark. I mean, come on. It's not realistic. So what we do to compensate for that, we train, we exercise, we do all these other things. And I know we're going to dive deeper into that in a little bit. But, I also look at, the purpose of a business continuity plan, and why we engage people with all of this, minimize that impact or disruption on the organization's critical functions and processes. Super important. And again, are you pulling out that BC plan to do that? Probably not. Ensure the continuity of essential services to customers and stakeholders. What does that action plan look like? And if you've got thoughts on all this, by all means, jump in.
Oh, so far I'm agreeing with everything you say.
Right.
Probably
Protect the
to the
organizations.
There's probably people out there cringing right now. Oh my God, they're trashing
I'm
BCP.
hopeful.
No, not
By the
necessarily.
way, any comments, just send to Alex and I'm sure he'll share them with me. All right, buddy. Uh, Protect the organization's reputation, assets, and financial stability. All right. Again, you pulling the plan out and following that playbook? Maybe. Provide a roadmap for recovery and resumption of normal operations, whatever normal is, and does normal even exist anymore? Again, you pulling out a plan for that? So my challenge with business continuity plans, BIAs, risk assessments, these are all static documents that aren't evolving with the change of business. Business today is different from business tomorrow, from the next, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
how can we look at these to make them more iterative? How can we look at our programs to lean into those other functions that I believe are so much more important than a printed out plan or a digitized plan? Again, not to say that we shouldn't have these things. I work in a regulated environment. Without without that evidence, I'm eviscerated by my regulators, and
Yes.
rightfully so. It is important to have these plans, but I also am being very real about it. When our plans are activated, the only playbook I'm pulling out is my DR playbook for when my data centers are smoking holes in the ground. That makes sense. Those are literal processes when I have to resurrect, tip servers back up, get processes going. But when I deal with like an all hazards approach, which is how I approach continuity, well, that just looks different. Well, what do you think we might be able to do, or where our pitfalls are around BCP, and what are those disadvantages or advantages to it?
I think one thing that happens is we don't really, leadership don't really believe that their employees know what they're doing. Because a lot of times when incidents occur, regardless an application is down or they can't, a certain function is not working, employees for the most part know what to do. They can turn around and say, well, yeah, there's a workaround for that. Just do this and that. They don't need to pull out a big binder or any kind of a plan on how to do that. They already know, or someone else in their group already knows, and someone's on the phone to incident management letting them know while they're continuing on in an alternate workaround method or a contingency method that they were already aware of. They're not sitting there doing nothing. And a lot of times, I think sometimes leadership or management or external parties don't have that faith in the employees that they know what they're doing. Because they do. It's, though someone's been around 10 years, even 5 years, or less, they know how something works and what they can do and what they can't do with the system. Why a field's not working. Oh yeah, type in, a star before you type in the name and then it works. They already know this stuff. They don't need a contingency plan for that. So when something occurs, unless it's something huge where nothing is working, they're not going to pull out a plan. And a lot of times, organizations, because I did work for a large financial institution, they had SOPs, standard operating procedures. Here's how you do something. And it's listed right in there. If it doesn't work, you do this. That's not the contingency plan that they're pulling out. That's their SOP they're pulling out that they're going to look at. And unfortunately, we try to capture all that information and throw it in a continuity plan, and it becomes, sometimes a huge binder, whether it be an online version or whether it be, an actual printed binder. That's going to be our Bible. Well, not really. It's the SOP for quite a few areas in this bank. It was the SOP. That's where they went to. They didn't go to a contingency plan. They didn't go to a crisis management plan. So sometimes I think people forget that the employees already know how to do some of this stuff. And a lot of these contingencies are found somewhere else. They're not in the contingency plan itself. And that contributes to sometimes why people really don't contribute a lot to BCPs, because this is duplication of effort. We already have some of this. And when they're going through a new projects or programs that are being implemented, part of that was to update all the SOPs. It's not
Right.
a contingency plan. It's like, well, this is double. All the contingency plan says is that the SOP was updated, and there's a link. Well, again, if the services and systems are down, they're not clicking on those links. So,
Right. And this can get into a very interesting nuance. What's the difference between business continuity and business resilience? So I have an analogy, and it's of a tree. Think of a tree, its branches, its trunk, its root system. Well, the branches are like business continuity, those individual, maybe pivot strategies for a department or a process, whereas business resilience is the root system. It's what keeps the tree upright in those turbulent times. It's what gives us more of a all hazards type of approach where we can pivot and flex, because each situation that we experience or disruption might just be different enough where if you're prescriptive, all of a sudden you're out of round, so to speak. And that prescriptive procedure may not apply to that variation of the event.
mhm.
Okay, now you're having to strategize during the crisis. I like to call that building the airplane while flying it, and it happens to be on fire. Not the ideal of circumstances. Where the idea of concept for me is business resilience is, again, we lean, and I know we're going to talk about this more, I keep hinting at it, training and exercising. That's what it's all about. I have a tagline for myself on LinkedIn is baking resilience into everyday conversations, because that's exactly what we need to do. Part of what we're doing is we talk about it frequently. We practice it, we exercise it in blue sky, safe conditions where we can fail successfully and learn from that, and just keep doing that again and again. Build that muscle memory. The military does similar things for a reason. Do they have prescriptive playbooks for certain actions and outcomes? Yup. But they also, train for scenarios and generalizations as well, where we're going to bake in these process procedures response so it becomes muscle memory, where you're not even thinking about it, you're just doing it. And to me, that's business resilience, where we're really investing into our training and exercising programs and not so much relying on literal plans, playbooks, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type of objectives. And again,
Mhm.
in a technical environment that may work really, really well, but in business in general, business isn't prescriptive typically. It just pivots with whatever it's experiencing. And that's business resilience to me.
Agreed. I like that, and I do like the tree analogy you gave there as well. I want to jump on a comment you said about blue sky and gray sky. A lot of times these plans that do get written are all written during blue sky times when everybody's happy and hopefully jovial, and you're writing a plan, so this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do, and it never actually gets validated. And I don't mean validating through testing. I mean actually going to that person and saying, what would you do?
Right.
Well, this is what I would do based on this information, this amount of information I need. Then I can make the decision. Oh, okay. Well, I thought you would just do it. Well, no, I can't. We don't even go to that level. And that doesn't help with business continuity plans either, because we went through the pandemic and there were so many stories of companies not pulling out the contingency plans. But yet afterwards, we're all saying, well, we should have. Well, it didn't unfold the way you wanted it to. That's why the plan wasn't looked at. It's not because you didn't think of it. Things unfold differently. It not only is your response sometimes based on assumptions, but how the disaster unfolds gets based on assumptions. And if you can name a disaster that actually unfolds the way you want it to, I don't think it's a disaster then, because you're already
Right.
prepared and it's not going to have the impact.
Right. Another analogy, and just thinking, and maybe it's a stretch, thinking about our conversation we just had around culture of micromanagement versus like servitude leadership. Business continuity is the micromanager. You
Mm.
know, you potentially very prescriptive, really focused on, a single entity, a department, a process, a strategy. Whereas business resilience is more of that servitude leadership where it tries to remove those roadblocks to empower the person to make the decision based on what they're experiencing, to lean into that adversity and find a way to thrive. Um, and like I said, might be a stretch, but I think I might be onto something. How business continuity, how business resilience, which I believe are two separate disciplines and approaches, um, inform an organization and its culture. To me, I look at an organization's culture that's very supportive, caring, and all of that, probably to be more successful with business resilience, where maybe more of a strict, refined, culture or somebody that's a regulated environment, business continuity might be the better fit because it fits, those outputs and processes within the organization. But I believe there's a balance between the two.
Yeah, and I think right now, and one of the reasons why the BCP can be a disadvantage is because we look at the BCP to try and create that resilience when we're not focusing on the people. It's the people that creates the plans. So if they're not resilient and they're not in the right frame of mind and they're not open and feel empowered to really contribute and challenge things, well, then guess what your plan is going to reflect? It's not going to reflect what you need it to, and it's becoming a huge binder full of fluff, full of compliance material and stuff you don't need, and then when something occurs, you don't use.
Right. It's like a trophy
Yeah,
showing that you completed a task successfully. It goes onto your shelf, never to be used or have really great purpose. Maybe that's a harsh outlook. And I can say the same about BIAs, risk analyses, and all of that. All these are static processes. If we can get these to an iterative process that can grow and change with our business demands, our threat intelligence, whatever we're experiencing, things like that, well, we can make better decisions on how to approach whatever that adversity is.
yeah, and for the record, it does take time to get to that point. 'Cause
Right.
you have to go through one big cycle before you can actually really start embedding things. And it does take time, but you can get there. And everything gets embedded in the organization. BIAs and risk assessments are embedded into project management documents when they're building new systems or processes or whatever the case may be. They get embedded in, and then that information gets taken out and put into other areas, and utilized. It's just understanding where those connections are and pulling it all together to do exactly as you said.
I concur 100% on that.
Well, on that note, I'm not going to test fate. I'm going to end the second segment on that one. We're talking with Jason Haas today, Business Continuity Awareness Week, Day 4, Employee Engagement. We will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.